All right, so I have the first episode of this Untitled Project complete. I believe this is going to be the first in our virtual Main Street series, as well as the first in an all eSports series. I would like to interview coaches, athletes, teams, whomever. This is something I would like to see flyover support in an ongoing capacity. So the Main Street interviews will not be this long. They will be what I call W5H interviews. This one kind of got away from me and is about 40 minutes long, give or take. I should also note that I had some syncing issues, so this is an audio-only episode after this intro here. So if you have time, give it a listen and learn a little bit about WSC eSports from head coach Mitch Keady. So here we go. We are here with Mitch Keady, and thank you very much for being the first guest on this, even as of now, untitled show.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mitch, you are the head esports coach for Wayne State. Esports are kind of not an older thing now, but I mean they're about a little bit more than a decade old at this point. And
yeah, I'd say so.
So they're rooted, but they still don't have as much grasp as traditional field and court sports, but those get plenty of attention. I kind of wanted to pivot and look at something else. So my first question to you is, how did you get into esports?
My first introduction to esports, really, it first started out as, a passion to play, and basically I would watch top Smash tournaments on YouTube. You'd see top players fly across the country to go compete at larger events, and that kind of kick-started a competitive career for me. Even though it wasn't anything where I went and competed in person, I still took it as seriously as though I was preparing to play in person.
Okay.
So the mentality started probably around 15 years old, and at the time I didn't have a Wii U console, which is where the definitive version of Smash was played. You had 3DS and Wii U. The definitive way to play was on Wii U with a GameCube controller. I went to lengths to, however kosher this is, I definitely had a Wii U where I got a legit game copy as a 15-year-old kid and played it on all of the right hardware to be able to practice like the pros.
Nice.
Definitely, totally, 100% legal. But it was the way that I was so desperate to play like the pros. I pulled out all the stops of the integrated graphics card that I could and got it to almost 100% playable. That's kind of where I started in my competitive career, which then launched to college when I learned Wayne State had an esports program, and I was frothing at the mouth to try and get in there because this was the first bare bones. They had League of Legends and Smash, and as much as I asked, it seemed like I couldn't find out anything more about it. But eventually, when I got into there, that's kind of when it all kicked off. And
nice. So you kind of alluded to practice, and this is one of my other questions that I had. I grew up playing your typical field and court sports, so yeah. I know very well what practices look like there. What does an esports practice look like?
For a lot of people, they start on their own. They don't really have a starting point to do it. Just kind of like what I alluded to, if you're somebody that's in, another country, or you're a kid, you live in a rural area or you live in the city, and you finally have a court and a basketball hoop to play with, just using basketball as an example.
Sure.
You come up with your own way to practice initially, but then you find you find a way to get informed, whether that's watching the NBA, or in this case for esports, you watch top-level play to inspire how you practice. And even though during the heat of competition, there's nobody saying, well, you should actually do this and this and this.
Sure.
You start emulating. You start emulating the way that a player would play, just like if you saw Michael Jordan in his prime, you as a kid would go out into your driveway and start trying to do all of the tricks,
yeah.
Even if you didn't know the inference behind them. When you start practicing, any practice is good practice.
Sure.
When I tell anybody that enters the program, any practice you can do, specifically watching top-level play, especially if you want to take esports seriously, your practice gets 100% instantly improved the moment you start consuming top-level content, or you go and you look for tutorials. Just like YouTube has a lot of sports tutorials on, shot technique, throwing technique for football.
Sure.
A lot of the basics. Just anywhere you start is going to be a good place to start.
Gotcha. So up at the Den, what does a practice look like once they make it into the Den? Once they make it into under your coaching, do they get in there, and when they're practicing, is it all game time, or when they get in there, are they consuming? Do you have them like essentially watch film? Or...
Yeah. So with this being my first year, there was less film than I had wanted initially. However, we went through tons of curricular content. I would say I put together, going through a popular podcast that kind of got me started into coaching for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I took students through Coach's Corner, which is top players turned coaches, which they help go through fundamentals and stuff like that. And so kind of basing off of that content and then distilling it down to bite-sized content to where students can absorb it, can actually pick it into pieces and start focusing on core elements one at a time.
Okay.
Without having to essentially absorb all that information from the get-go.
Okay, nice. And when you started playing at 15, and then when you came to Wayne State, and then you graduate, did you see yourself coming back and becoming the coach?
Not initially, because we had a coach that was here before me. Awesome for him that he got another coaching opportunity back closer to family.
Okay.
So when that opened up, I was currently at another job, and right then and there, I was like, this has been my passion.
Okay.
And on the side, I would, somewhat pseudo coach a lot of players for my specialty, which I've said is Super Smash Bros.
Right.
Ultimate. But now going into that, I had no idea when I graduated from college that I would ever get into this kind of work.
Yeah.
But when that cropped up, it took off. And as much as I wanted to say absolutely yes, I want to come coach. Obviously, I had to put an application in. I went up against other people that applied for the job, and even though I thought I had a good, strong shot, I said whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And granted, the door even opening to begin with was just cool to stand on the outside and look in and be like, this is a possibility.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I was very happy when I heard that you were hired as the coach. What are the primary games that your athletes participate in? Yeah, and I don't know if athletes is an actual term, but that's one that I have been throwing around for a couple of years, and so I am claiming that I coined it.
Yes. Yes, Jeremy definitely did. That is how I refer to my players today. Back in the fall when I first brought it in, I told them, I like to call you students or players, and I don't think there's a really good blend. And then Jeremy dropped it on me, athletes, and I thought that is awesome. But the core titles that we currently offer are, as I said, Smash Ultimate, Overwatch, Marvel Rivals, League of Legends, Valorant, and Rocket League.
Okay. Are those the main? Are those like the core competitive titles?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So in the fall, we only had 6 core titles, and the one that joined this spring semester was Marvel Rivals. And the issue we ran into is having an overload of players that wanted to be in the seats and not enough seats or hardware to support them all at the same time. So with any collegiate league, there are times when students are supposed to play, and it's my job to make sure that they've got that time to play, and if not, reorganizing different practices around to accommodate games on those nights. So 7 was a lot to take on for my first year.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm reconsidering if, one of the titles needs to kind of sit for a semester. Because of the struggle that we ran into with finding availability for everyone, I don't want to promise students availability where there's not going to be.
Sure.
Thankfully, we had it this semester,
yeah,
but it may not always be that way. So
you're kind of at capacity for your team
yes.
size then. Okay.
Yeah, we're always looking for ways to upgrade our space. In the fall, We had a table that was just for console players. That table has since moved from 2 monitors to 4, and outlets next to those monitors to allow laptops, to allow extra mics, headsets to be set up there. Because one of the things that Wayne State really loves is live streaming our titles, which is at twitch.tv/WSC Wildcats.
Nice.
You can find us there pretty much every night during the spring and fall semester. However, we have people that want to commentate, and unfortunately sometimes we don't have enough space to offer more than one title for commentating per night. So normally we'll have 1 to 2 titles that are playing at the same time every night.
So are the commentators, are they like broadcast students then, or are they other athletes?
So most of them are students that have either been in the program in the past and they decide to step out to focus on their studies.
Okay.
We've had some broadcast students step in because that helps them in their career, in their
Absolutely.
majors. We love having them. If you're somebody that is in a broadcasting degree, or you've simply just wanted to do commentary for esports, even if you need experience, this is a great place to do it, because we're not looking for professionals. We're looking for students that want to invest in other students.
And on that note, that is something that if this takes off, that is something that I want to do also. Is I think there's like a pickleball league at the campus branch of State Nebraska Bank, and I would love to have like just goofing off and having the broadcast students come in and do commentating for that. I think it would be great. I think there's a lot of opportunity here to afford some of those kind of off the wall opportunities and just have fun with it and integrate more with the community. So can you give us a quick overview of what your first season was like, as far as some of the things that well, from any angle really, successes, failures, whatever.
Yeah, so I would say, well, for the fall and spring semesters, getting into having a stable staffing, it was solidified early on, but getting into the routine of someone that's new to the job, and then also having students kind of bring you up to speed too, because some of the workers that we had also commentate, they play titles, so they understood from years past what the program looked like. From a player's perspective, you have a really good grasp on the program that you've been in, but from a coaching perspective, when it includes a lot more administrative work of logging into your leagues to get teams logged in, to mitigating problems, especially as game time nears, a lot of these tedious little admin tasks for multiple titles a night was something that I wasn't prepared for going in.
Sure.
But within a month or two, that started to become second nature for me. And so rolling with the punches, hearing students' frustrations, especially when you have another team that's not showing up, well, they're 15 minutes past. Well, as somebody, if we place ourselves in the other team's spot, by legality, after 15 minutes, we're supposed to be awarded the match. Like, do we do the gentleman's thing? And, we make sure within the 15 minutes that we've already messaged the other team a couple times.
Yeah.
That was a big thing this semester of helping students navigate the uncertainty of we don't have somebody here tonight. To really put competitive integrity back into focus. Not to say it wasn't there before, because Drew did an amazing job.
Sure.
We have a rule set in the den, no foul language.
Good for you, because as a gamer growing up, I exercised a lot of foul language practice gaming.
And so really, Drew started the notion of this isn't a hangout league. We are competitors, and
Nice.
we're going in as competitors, making sure that we're abiding and that we have integrity when we compete. So we would have matches where somebody wasn't there. I had one instance that I shut down pretty quickly. Somebody said, well, so-and-so's not on the roster, but they play the title. Could they step in? And I said, absolutely not.
Yeah.
That's like, yes, this is impacting your record. But when you have your feet to the coals and they go back and they check the integrity of this match, do you want your entire season to be thrown out all because you couldn't do the right thing? No. That is by and far away from what Wayne State wants from its players. And
Sure.
And since that one interaction, it never came up again.
Nice.
So to really treat our students as competitors, to invest in them, is not only to say you have a place on this team, it's to take their competitive career seriously.
Nice. I like that. Because, yeah, like I said, I swore like a sailor when I was gaming, and I haven't. I've also retired from gaming unofficially, and my son plays a lot, and so I kind of watch him game, and so if there's a game I want to see, I'll ask him if he wants to play it, and then he'll play it and show me, and we've got our own little show that we do about that, and that's been kind of fun. So you've kind of mentioned already that you're bursting at the seams as far as players, and you haven't really gone through a whole lot of recruiting cycles yet, but if you were recruiting, how do you go about recruiting, or are you always kind of actively scouting? Because how many seniors do you graduate, and how many players come back year after year?
Yeah, so thankfully the program is not short of people who want to try out, but that alone, I think, is not enough to really bring in, to make sure you're doing your due diligence, because Wayne State really wants to invest in the players that comes through its doors.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could say exclusively the students that are on campus right now are going to be the first picks in through the door. In the past, we've had top players that we've tried to secure from different parts of Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois. We even had somebody from Colorado that we were scouting. And just having the dynamic of somebody from a different part of the country in their views and their takes on competition, I think is one, it brings a new student to Wayne State, right?
Right, absolutely.
You love to see somebody come and have success and find the joy that is to have a degree at Wayne State.
Mm-hmm.
Being that we're one of the more affordable colleges here in the country. And so to have somebody's esports career started here, historically, we are a top 3 school in the nation for our collegiate leagues.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So Smash Ultimate, Overwatch, Rocket League, and League of Legends have been top titles for us. And we take a lot of pride in when we go to competitions, you can see heads turn when Wayne State walks into the room.
Is that right?
When I was a
That's
freshman,
cool.
or my first year at Wayne State, being a competitor, we went to Minnesota, and I had only played some of these people online in our league, but they were invited to Mankato, Minnesota, and to see, us being a top school at that point, grossing in our league, to have heads turn and be like, so that's who we've been playing.
Right.
I'm like, I'm a nobody, and I can hear across the room, hey, that's the banjo and kazooie player.
Nice.
We have to shut him down real quick. And so to have that experience for Wayne State, I want every student to go into competition, even if it's not in person, with the understanding that we take our competition seriously.
Yeah, right on.
Wayne State's made a name for itself, and that's a very rich experience to be able to have out of the gate that kind of solidified of I want to stay in this.
That's really cool. That's awesome.
But
I didn't know they were a top 3 school in the nation when it comes to what.
So
put some boundaries on that a little bit. Does that mean for our size of school, or what do you mean by that?
So within NECC, which is our eSports collegiate league that we participate in, we've also been in ECAC. So throughout the time that Wayne State has had eSports, generally speaking, we've been top 3 contenders in those leagues. So having a new coach, getting the new dynamic of new schedules and new teams, with old seniors, with seniors graduating, getting new team compositions. A lot of the students that I came into the program with are obviously graduated by now, but the new students that I left the program in the care of when I left, I got to see them finish out their
That's really
their
cool.
competitive careers. So
That's really cool.
now to have those new team dynamics, it's going to be really interesting to see how students make light of that and address some of those team getting familiar with new students.
Well, yeah, that you mentioned team compositions. When you have a team like that, I mean, is it like it's got to be similar? These kids, students grew up playing with certain, I mean, with their team,
Right.
So kind of like a high school, going back to basketball and stuff like that. You learn each other's play style, and then you go off and you join a different team filled with a bunch of similar talents.
Yeah.
And do you see a lot of is it friendly competition? Do you see a lot of people vying for, no, I'm the best player, or how do you see those personalities mixing in those new team dynamics?
Yeah, so generally I tell teams, especially when it's been decided who's making the team, you are very used to playing individually. A lot of our games have solo queuing modes for matchmaking, whereas this becomes, the team aspect. And again, some of these games that are inherently team-based, people will get into matchmaking with just themselves, and they're put into different teams. So when they go into a team environment, they're used to being matched up with somebody for 15, 20 minutes, and then the match concludes, and then they never play with that person again. But when they're on a team that never changes, different things arise, and you have to be willing to take some of those a day at a time, because there will be some of those individuals that they do know a lot.
Right.
But they need the reminder that this is a team, and even though you may have a lot of knowledge about this title, your goal is to lead your team and play in a team capacity.
What skills does an athlete gain from the program besides elevated hand-eye coordination?
So kind of like what I was saying is when they enter the program, they're being put in a team capacity. Now, there are titles where it becomes a 1v1 format, but all of our titles so far are either 3v3 or 5v5 or 4v4.
Okay.
So by the time they leave the program, I'm expecting that they are leaders by example, of course, especially during my time in the program. Even though I was never a captain up until my senior year, really making sure that students kept, like I said, competitive integrity in check, just common courtesy. Because as much as I love the fact you can push buttons faster than the other person, making sure that you're somebody who cares about character quality far exceeds someone who wants to be a steamroller in the program.
Yep. Good human.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
put it simply.
That is my goal also as a teacher, is I want you to leave Wayne State being a good human. That is my main
I remember
focus,
that.
Right?
I remember that towards the end of the year you said the only thing I want to leave you with is please be good humans.
Be a good human. Go out and be a good human. So what excites you most about the eSports program at Wayne State?
Student success. Obviously seeing students succeed in their titles, but actually the thing that probably makes me even more pumped is watching them respond to adversity.
Okay, nice.
A lot of games have a lot of tough mental battles that each student will go through, and at some point every student tells himself, I'm not worth a darn to this game. Why do I even play?
Right.
I'm horrible, and watching them and encouraging them to break beyond the mental breakdown. Oh, it gets me even more excited than to see someone absolutely dominate a match, of like seeing them persevere through adversity.
Yeah.
It makes me happy.
Nice. Good for you. How about engaging with regional high school sports programs? Do you engage with, like, I know Wayne has an esports program, Wakefield, Why Not, Wausau. A lot of these towns around here have esports programs. Is there any way that Wayne State interacts with them or engages in any way?
Yeah. So right now we are in the early processes of setting up for the fall Nebraska High School Esports, or NSCSA, mouthful right there.
Right.
We are collaborating with them to have high school esports state in the fall, hosted at Wayne State. But my main way of kind of getting plugged in is just by emails right now. That's high school students are asking questions about what is Wayne State like, how can I get involved, and especially tours on campus. Tours. I'm so grateful to tours that come by.
Mm-hmm.
I'll usually stop a tour and say like, hey, are any of you gamers? Do you have any interest in esports? And even sometimes I'll get students that say, no, not really. And, actually, I don't think I'm that great of a player. I'm more of a casual. And I'll tell them, we've had people go through this program that went from emerging casual players to being absolute monsters on the battlefield.
Right on.
Now, one of my students that just graduated, Trey McQuay,
Yeah.
I saw him come into the program, seeing him go from someone who was really passionate about getting in and learning about Smash Ultimate. Now he's graduated and he's so talented. So he's a great player. He's a great person.
Yep.
And
I've said that about him as a
Yeah.
student, and so it's great to hear that.
he's just a man of character.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
And so now that he's graduated, he's actually hosting tournaments in Norfolk.
Oh wow.
At what's that store up there? That's there's a
JC Hobby.
Yeah, JC Hobby.
Really?
So he's hosting tournaments. There aren't that many places to compete around here. Wayne State has started up its local scene with a few Smash events. I'm looking to get bigger titles like Overwatch and Valorant.
Okay.
And League of Legends in there. It just comes down to time and availability.
Sure. Absolutely. Is it possible to have, and I don't want to write checks that you have to cash here. How hard is it to pull off like a high school tournament? Is that something that is even a thing since esports is kind of emerging, or would you consider it emerged at this point, or is
Yeah.
it still on its way up?
So I would say it's still on its way up, just purely for the fact that the main point of these tournaments is to help students get kickstarted. I feel like, one, it gives them a competition outlet, but this is also a really big way that recruiters and scouters
Well, right.
can have their... And so when I say emerging, there's not a lot of documented coverage of these tournaments. However, they're very prevalent.
Right, and yeah, coverage is awesome, and being able to have like some kind of coverage presence is great. But I'm more thinking like, what about getting why not Wakefield, Wausau?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the Norfolk, a lot of the schools, and your athletes run the tournament for
The high school students,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And I don't know if that's something that is even possible, but it is. A buddy of mine and I geeked out about this several years before esports finally did come to Wayne State, because we
Yeah.
had talked about wanting to build servers and host them in our data center and stuff like that for students to geek out on. And then a couple years later, the esports program showed up. But that was something that we wanted to do and use for recruiting and stuff like that. And so I didn't know if that was even something that is a possibility that Wayne could host.
So it most definitely is. Having the space and availability, like I said, but it also takes into account the other yearly schedules of those high schools and
That
such.
makes sense.
Getting them to line up, there's probably not going to be, maybe more than a day when it's going to work for everybody else, and getting them to all kind of sign off on that
Gotcha.
is an ongoing process of that probably takes at least a year.
That
phased
makes
out.
sense. And again, I'm not trying to write checks.
No,
But so growing up, we had in a town that was maybe 15, 20 miles away, we had an open gym every Monday night. And so every Monday night there were like maybe 20, 25 kids from different towns around our area that would meet at this gym, and we
Yeah.
would play pickup games for 3 or 4 hours. Is that a possibility where you could do like open den, have students from these different teams that not all of them can make it? Some of them will have other schedules. They
Sure.
play baseball in the summer. They've got jobs in the summer. But if they got together and came and were hanging out in the den, it gets them on campus. And sorry, this is turning into an advertisement for Wayne State, but
no, that's something I definitely like to see in the future.
yeah.
Maybe having something that's either, once or twice monthly to start. That's so for those who aren't familiar, you have titles that have local events that regularly happen. And so sometimes when we have breaks, when we have slow parts of the season where you have a gap week. That's kind of what I liked to start up with Wayne State in terms of Smash getting one title to start it, and looking to see how feasible it is to have something that's either bi-monthly or monthly.
Okay.
Getting people in the door. Of course, for people that are younger than 18, we have to have their parents express permission.
Oh, absolutely, sure.
To have them on campus.
Yeah, we had to sign waivers and stuff like that for the school that we were doing the open gym at and stuff like that. And that was eons ago. So yeah, liability has been an issue for eons. So for people unfamiliar with esports, what do you wish they understood about it?
Yeah, so esports at many establishments, high school, college, even something on a larger organization. Basically how esports started was early on, you would have a lot of people bring their computers and setups for early PC games, for early Xbox games, and they would have LAN parties.
LAN parties
were big in the 90s and early 2000s, and even before then there were some titles that you could congregate all together and have that in one place, so a lot of people decided to get together. So esports as a whole started out as organizations. A popular esports organization that's still to this day, FaZe, became a very big topic of meme culture back in the mid 2000s. Very famous around Call of Duty, which expanded into a lot of other organizations, and then it made its way to colleges and high schools around generally the same time. So esports has been established since the early 2000s. It's just never probably gotten the lip service that it needed at the time.
Sure.
But for gamers, they were very aware of organizations like FaZe.
Yeah.
It's starting to become as popular as regular sports. Now, as time goes on, for some of us who have been playing throughout the years, just like how there are older fans of traditional sports, the more time that passes, the more fond people will become of spectating things such as esports. Yep. So the general notoriety isn't probably there yet for most of the world.
Sure.
But within the next 20 years, you're going to start finding people that this is something that they become invested in. There are people that are invested right now. It's a huge demographic for live streaming.
Yep. Twitch is. I treat Twitch like it's kind of like talk radio.
Yep,
and
exactly.
I find a game that I want to know something about, and I'll throw Twitch on, and then I listen to that gamer talk about it or interact with their chat or whatever. And yeah, it's becoming a big deal. So if you could see into the future, what do you hope next season looks like, and what about 5 and 10 year plans?
In terms of a 5 to 10 year timeline, I really hope that Wayne State is able to expand the space for esports in the esports arena known as the Den. How do we envision and how do we actually make that a reality?
Gotcha.
Is a whole nother battle in and of itself. So that's my ambition. That's my hope. Just whatever timeline, however long it takes, I do see the program getting there, and we have established scholarships for all of our students.
Nice.
The program started out with very small scholarships, and
Sure.
right now we're actively in talks to secure more.
Wow, right, that's great. So now we've got a couple of fun closer questions here. I know Smash was your game, but is that your all-time favorite, or what is your all-time favorite game?
So on a personal level, if I had to choose, Banjo-Kazooie is my preferred choice of a collectathon platformer.
Okay.
I'm only a couple months older than it in terms of a timeline. So when you talk about siblings renting it from Blockbuster or Hollywood Video, that was my first imaginative escapade of this is what fun is. So
nice.
That's probably got to be my all-time favorite. Now the series has been long dead for a long time.
Has it?
Since 2008.
Same with Blockbuster and Hollywood Video.
Yeah, right.
I think Hollywood Video is no longer a company. Forgive me if I'm wrong. No, but I know Blockbuster is not.
On a personal level, and then the additional title that I coach outside of Smash is Overwatch.
Okay.
Been playing that for a couple of years off and on, and then recently starting to get into that. So as a coach, you would think, oh, he's got to know all these titles, right? I went into this being like, hey, I'm going to learn as many as possible, and my boss told me, that's what the other two coaches said. it is pretty unreasonable to expect you to know every single one of these titles. And he said, teach what you can and really hone in on captains taking team ownership of teaching new students that come into the future.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. Do you have a favorite gaming or competition moment, either personal or as a coach, or both, if you have something of each?
Yeah, so personally, actually this happened just within the last year. So I would say two isolated moments. As someone who has competed behind a screen competitively, I was able to play number 1 in the world for Smash Ultimate. Both him and I got put into a bracket where we ran into each other, and I was able to snub a game away from him in a best of 3. And then he proceeded to pull out his main character and wipe the floor with me. But in terms of, where I went into it being like, okay, this is a landmark moment that I can apply what I know against somebody who's a top player who competes on the regular. And for me, that moment was real special. But kind of tying into Wayne State, within the last year, I went to an event in Lincoln, and for years my captain at the time would talk about this really skilled player from Omaha, and at the time, he would talk about him so often of like, oh, because he played the same character as my captain.
Okay.
So he would kind of look up to him, and the time came, and at the event, I got to play him for the first time. This guy was a myth at Wayne State.
Okay.
And there was probably no chance I'd ever play him. But it came down to, I was down 0-2 in a best of 5. And I was 1 game away from getting knocked to loser side in this tournament. And, I'm a big believer in watching people respond to adversity. I saw somebody else come up next to me, not talking to me, but talking to someone else, and say, he doesn't know this player. He doesn't know the matchup. And that lit a fire underneath me like none other. And I was, forgive my language, pissed.
Yeah?
I was pissed because people were counting me out before it was over, and I reverse swept him.
Nice.
So to have someone who's been a myth at Wayne State as like an all-time, talented player, to now get to play him and be able to say, I came back at the brink of defeat.
Right.
Now, as a coach, I got up from that set. My legs were cold. I'm about to black out, and the only thing I could say was, you are so good. You are so good. And of course, as the person who just won, you're trying not to be, a jerk to this person that you just won or that you just beat, but also at the same time, this talented individual that you just played, that you've been having a concept of for years, to now get to play in person was like, it all came to a point, and it tied it off with a bow.
Nice.
So
how much street cred did that earn you with your players?
Well, with the local scene, it earned me a lot of street cred. There were some people that really weren't talking to me at the time, and then they're like, "Oh, good job, MK! Oh my goodness, you just beat so and so." But now with my players, it's kind of a legacy moment of how far I came from being a new player to the program to where I got to implement everything that I learned, plus the investment my captain and a teammate mentored me into being a coach today.
Yeah. Really
was a storybook moment.
Nice.
Because I ended up going into top 8 and going up against their number 1 seed and narrowly losing. So
nice.
To be able to look back on there, and as a coach being like, I'm applying what I teach to my own play, that I'm not just somebody who tells it how it ought to be,
right,
without giving accurate information. So
you still actively compete?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
When I can, of course, because I'm a coach and that comes first.
Sure.
But when I can get up to Omaha and Lincoln, when I go back to visit my family in the Des Moines, Iowa area, yeah, I'm definitely very much a competitor. So.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Sorry for that little tirade, but...
No, that was great. That's exactly what I wanted you to talk about. I think that's fantastic.
And just a little side moment from time at Wayne State of being a coach, we had somebody who was a senior, and he was our last line of defense.
Yeah.
And this was coming down to the last match of the season, and it was all up to him to take 9 stocks. So in Smash Ultimate, in a team-based match, it's a 4v4, 1 versus 1 format. So you have a finite resource of how many lives, and each player gets 3. So you're all standing in a line, and you go in 1 by 1 with 3 lives. Your goal is to keep all of the lives that you went in with, and when you start your next one, assuming you won, you go in with how many lives you have left.
Oh, wow.
So that resource gets dwindled down, and your goal is to take all of the other lives from the other team. So we're down to our anchor, our last line of defense, and in the past, he had a few confidence issues of thinking that it all relied on him, and when he didn't perform, that it was all his fault. He's a talented player.
Right. Pressure of the anchor.
And so, before the match he said, yeah, it's not looking too good, but I'll go in and do what I can. Great guy. Just a great attitude all around, just a real delight to be around. And he went in and he played some of his character's worst slated performance matchups. So his character should fall handedly to all of these characters, and he 1 by 1 just started whittling it down. He didn't lose a single life, and then it was down to the wire with the last one, and unfortunately he didn't come out of that, but that was the most confident he threw on his music, and I saw him lock in you see varsity sports in high school,
yeah.
And you see those players that have worked so hard and invested so much into their career, to see them on varsity night go out there and leave it all on the court and leave it all here. One of the proudest moments I could see him starting as a player from when I started, or from when I left as a senior, to now get to come back and finish that journey with them.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Going full circle.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic.
Now new stories are beginning, right?
Right.
Now the old guard can talk about the old guard.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. All right. Well, thanks, Mitch. Tell us one more time, where do people find the
live stream?
The live stream.
Yeah, you can find us at twitch.tv/WSC Wildcats, and we aim to stream every single night.
Is that during the school year?
Yeah, during the school year.
During school year. Okay.
You can also find us at WSC Wildcats on Instagram and Twitter.
Okay.
Or X, if
sure.
If you, yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Mitch. It's
Yeah.
been great talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's fun to see you in a social and becoming a good human.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thanks, Jeremy.
Yep. Thanks, Mitch.